Imagine this for a moment and really let the picture settle in your mind. It is July 12th, 2026, inside MetLife Stadium. The World Cup final. The air is heavy, extra time is ticking away, and the scoreline refuses to budge. Two nations stand on opposite ends of the same impossible dream. On one side, you have a country that has never won a knockout match beyond the quarterfinals and now finds itself one single breakaway from footballing immortality. On the other, the team that has shaped and dominated global football for roughly the last decade is suddenly clinging on, almost desperately, just hoping to survive the next 60 seconds. Now, this setup sounds impossible. It feels like something pulled straight from a storybook or a movie. But here's the thing, it is not impossible at all. Situations exactly like this have happened before. Not once, not twice, but 4 different times. And the amazing thing is that every single time, the moment felt unbelievable right up until it became real. Think back to 1958 when Brazil, carried by a 17-year-old Pele, swept aside the old European football hierarchy and ignited a dynasty that changed the sport forever. Or consider 1974 when the world was stunned by the sudden rise of total football, a style so fluid and so revolutionary that it reshaped Germany and reinvented the entire game in a matter of weeks. Then there is 1998 when France, dismissed and underestimated even as the hosts, completely dismantled Brazil and showed the world that football was no longer controlled by just a handful of traditional nations. And of course 2010 when Spain's tiki-taka refused to let anyone breathe. Iniesta scored in extra time and a brand new footballing philosophy took over the world for roughly a decade. Now, here is the part that most people miss. But before I go into detail, if you enjoy this type of content, hit the subscribe button. Every one of those tournaments, all 4 of them, followed almost the exact same hidden script. And right now, here in 2025, we are watching that very same script quietly assemble itself again, line by line as if someone hit reload on football history. To understand why, we need to slow ourselves down and look at the deeper patterns, because these things never happen randomly. World Cup history does not move in straight lines. It moves in cycles. And whenever these cycles align, the global hierarchy gets overturned. Not occasionally, not maybe, every single time. So let me walk you through this carefully, because once you see the pattern, it becomes almost impossible to unsee it. First, every major shift in the football landscape has begun the exact same way, with the old dominant nations arriving at the tournament just a little too old, a little too tired, and a little too dependent on players who, while still brilliant, can no longer physically carry an entire nation through 7 high-intensity matches. Argentina, for example, will walk into 2026 with Messi, Di Maria, and Otamendi all at 38 years old. They are legends, yes, but not machines. France faces a similar moment of transition, where Mbappé is now carrying veterans who once carried him. Croatia's extraordinary midfield trio, Modric, Brozovic, Kovacic, has pushed against physics for nearly a decade, but physics eventually wins. And Germany, though promising, is still rebuilding its identity. This moment, this exact aging window, has historically signaled the end of an era and the beginning of something new. Next, while those old powers begin to slow, something very different happens in club football. A new tactical idea emerges. It starts quietly at first, in a handful of clubs, and then spreads until it dominates the Champions League. Only then does it reach national teams. We saw this with total football before 1974. We saw tiki-taka rising before 2010. And we are seeing a new transformation right now. Modern football is moving away from slow possession and toward a system built on relational fluidity, aggressive counterpressing, inverted fullbacks, goalkeeper playmakers, and physically dominant number 9s who can operate under enormous pressure. And the countries whose players already live inside this tactical universe, nations like Spain, the United States, and a revitalized Brazil, will enter this World Cup with a massive structural advantage. They do not need to learn the new game. They already speak its language. Meanwhile, something else is happening quietly, almost without global attention. Golden generations are forming in places the traditional football world often overlooks. The United States, for example, is about to field perhaps the deepest squad in its history, with almost every player competing in top European leagues. Canada, too, has assembled a group far stronger than most people realize. Across Africa, depth is replacing inconsistency, with Morocco, Senegal, and Nigeria all rising at the same time. And in Asia, Japan and South Korea are entering the prime years of their most gifted groups in decades. This is how global power shifts. Not through miracles, but through timing. And finally, the 2026 World Cup format itself acts like a kind of chaos accelerator. With 48 teams, 3-team groups, and only one nation eliminated per group, the entire structure rewards unpredictability. Teams that might have been punished harshly in the past now have room to make mistakes. Upsets become more valuable. And historically, every time the World Cup expanded, whether in 1950, 1982, or 1998, new powers emerged and old powers stumbled. So when all four of these conditions appear together, aging giants, a tactical revolution, emerging golden generations, and a chaotic tournament design, football history has always reshaped itself. And that is exactly why 2026 is not simply another World Cup. It is the next turning point. Now, if we follow this historical pattern step by step, the tournament usually unfolds in 5 gradual phases. First, a major power, often ranked among the top nations in the world, is knocked out unusually early. This becomes the first signal that the old hierarchy is wobbling. Then another traditional giant narrowly escapes their group, and the pundits breathe a sigh of relief, claiming there is nothing to worry about. But that survival is usually a mirage. What follows is the real turning point, the tactical massacre. A younger, more modern, more fluid team overwhelms an aging giant in a way that feels shocking in the moment but inevitable in hindsight. After that, the stage is set for a coronation. A new champion emerging with a style of play that reshapes coaching philosophies for the next decade. And finally, that new style forms the foundation of a new footballing empire that lasts anywhere between 8 and 12 years. If we compare today's landscape to past transitions, the pattern suggests that nations like Argentina, France, or England might be the ones who struggle, while countries like Spain, the United States, and a newly expressive Brazil could rise into the spotlight. And quietly, nations such as Morocco or Senegal might be closer to glory than most people are ready to admit. The crucial thing to remember is that this pattern has never failed when all 4 conditions align. Not once since 1930. So as we approach 2026, we are not simply waiting for another tournament. We are approaching what may be the next great reset, the moment when football rewrites its own future once again. And if you believe that, or even if you are curious about how these patterns shape the modern game, make sure you subscribe, stay tuned, and join the conversation. Because the next 7 months may change everything about how we understand this sport.